Welcome. Good evening. I'm Manon Mola. I'm editor of the Architectural Review. And I'm hosting you this evening in part because I spent a year living in Brazil. I'd like to start by thanking the people who have gathered us all here tonight. So there's Ellis and the Architecture Foundation, there's John and the Barbican, and there's Alice and Rearc, who have enabled us all to make it to this room and learn from Brazil. So I was saying I lived in Brazil, and then much later I went back when we were putting together a special issue of the AR on Brazil. That was in October 2019 that issue came out. It was not long after Jair Bolsonaro had been elected. There were very interesting buildings that were completed at the time, but it was also a complicated political context, and that's why we did an issue about Brazil. Let me see if this works. Yes. This was the rooftop of the SESC 24 de Maio by Paulo Mendes da Rocha and MMBB. It wasn't the first special issue that the AR had dedicated to Brazil. There was one actually in March 1944. The Architectural Review is a publication that's 129 years old. So in 1944, the editors at the time had spent a lot of time reporting and mapping bombed buildings in Europe, and they needed to look elsewhere. And so they turned to Brazil, and we can only imagine now what it would have been like for them to do an issue on Brazil, very different from when we did it a few years ago. J. de Souza Leon writes in that introduction to the issue, "Someday, who knows, Brazil may endow mankind with an original civilization based on racial equality and international goodwill." Maybe we can discuss later where we've come. We haven't done another Brazil special since 2019, but we regularly publish Brazilian stories in the magazine. In our September issue, for example, which is all about forests, we included a keynote essay where Paulo Tavares argues that indigenous Amazonian landscape management demonstrates how urban environments can be woven out of the forest rather than defined in opposition to it. We also included a study of 3 buildings designed by Rosenbaum and Yawanawachi Birachi Brasil Nishiwaka in the Brazilian Amazon. The buildings blend ancestral practices with innovative timber construction, and there's also a portrait of Sebastião and Lélia Wanek Salgado, whose work advocates social justice and environmental restoration. Brazil is an incredible country, and the speakers tonight will introduce the context in which they're working, but I just wanted to give you a very quick sense of the place. I guess the most important thing maybe is the scale. It's important to remember that you can fit the UK 35 times in this country, which just helps put things kind of in perspective. You can obviously see the Amazon rainforest. Most of you will be familiar with São Paulo and Rio. You can it helps kind of understand where they are even in relation to one another. Some of our speakers come from Belo Horizonte, which is further inland, in the department of Minas Gerais. I've put Brasilia in there, kind of much further inland. I've put Belém because they're hosting the COP30 next month. But Brazil is also the country with the world's highest biological diversity, and that translates into a rich palette of materials, a wealth of ancestral indigenous practices that are related to food, to gardening, to construction and land management. So I think in the talks tonight we'll also talking about this. So tonight we'll be hearing and learning from 4 brilliant spatial practitioners who are also researchers, community organizers, activists, educators. They'll each give a 20-minute presentation about their work, and we'll then have a conversation and obviously time for questions from the audience. I'll briefly introduce all 4 of them before they come to the stage. So we will start with Julia Perez and Victoria Braga, who founded the studio Ruina in 2020. As you might have guessed, Ruina means ruin. And Julia and Victoria, who trained as architects, see ruins as the kind of beginning of architecture. They're based in São Paulo, and their practice brings together collective processes, ecological awareness, and experimental research to investigate alternative modes of production. They ask themselves how to pay critical attention to the past in order to build possible futures in the present. Our next speaker will be Karina Guedes, who is behind Arquitetas na Periferia, or Architects in the Periphery, or more specifically, female architects. So it's a practice that teaches women to plan, design, build, renovate, and extend their own homes. The organization exists formally since 2018, but it's a project that began while Karina was a student, in her master's. And beyond the homes that are kind of design and build, with Arquitetas na Periferia, Karina encourages kind of cooperation and autonomy. And the third presentation will be by Gabriela de Matos, who is originally from Minas Gerais, so not far from Belo Horizonte. Some of you might have seen the Brazilian pavilion in the 2023 Venice Architecture Biennial, which Gabriela had curated with Paulo Tavares, actually, who wrote that piece I mentioned. The pavilion was titled Terra, which means soil as well as land or territory, as well as earth, kind of cap-E earth, the planet. And her research focuses on pre-colonial and contemporary architecture from Africa and its diaspora, with an emphasis on Afro-Brazilian architecture. With the project Black Female Architects, she has mapped the work of more than 800 Black female architects in Brazil. It might be interesting to see where they are actually on this map. And edited the book Black Architects, the first volume, in 2019, which is the first publication of Black female architects in the country. I think that's plenty from me for now. Julia and Victoria, are you happy to come to the stage?
Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much to the Architecture Foundation, the Barbican Center for hosting us tonight, also ReArch Institute. My name is Victoria Braga. I'm an architect and researcher based in São Paulo, Brazil, and a former co-founder of Ruina and Arquitetura. Together with my colleague Julia, we are part of the practice lab of the ReArch Institute, and today we share a project currently under development in São Paulo called Eco-Social Oasis 9 de Julho. So this presentation will be divided in two parts. I will be giving you the context, the social, political, and environmental background that gives meaning to this project, and then Julia will continue with the design proposal itself. So a little bit of global and local context here. Well, the productive arrangement of our cities is exhausted. We live in a moment where inequalities are becoming more and more extreme, and the harmful effects of human activity in the planet's health are increasingly drastic. Within this global context, contradictions are everywhere. They're visible and tangible. In São Paulo, for example, despite an alarming housing deficit, there are more empty homes than people without housing. But Brazil's Federation Constitution defines that property is not an absolute right, but a right conditioned by its social and environmental function. This means that private property must serve a collective purpose. It must benefit both society and the environment. And in this sense, housing occupations play a crucial role in making this principle real. They reclaim buildings that no longer fulfill any social purpose and transform them into living self-management communities. So a little bit of also this macro-meso scale. If we zoom in São Paulo, a city of over 12 million inhabitants, produces more than 20,000 tons of waste every day, we see how environmental and housing issues are deeply connected. With a recycling rate of only 7%, a housing deficit of over 400,000 homes and almost 600,000 vacant housing units, this combination reveals how urban speculation generates both social and ecological exclusion. So, within this scenario, the MSTC, Movimento Sem Teto do Centro, or Homeless Movement of the Center, emerges as a collective force. Their motto is, as long as housing is a privilege, occupation is a right. Through the occupation of vacant buildings in downtown São Paulo, they guarantee decent housing and basic rights, while transforming these abandoned urban voids into active, self-organized communities. And the 9th of July occupation is one of the most symbolic examples of this movement. It's not only a housing complex, it also has become a cultural hub, a space of production, care, and community life. But to understand 9th of July, we need to look at its surroundings, the Bela Vista neighborhood in the heart of São Paulo. This area was historically a black territory, home to a large quilombo, and shaped by Saracura River Valley, a natural watercourse that once ran through what is now 9 de Julho Avenue. Over time, this landscape was drastically transformed. The river was canalized, the valley filled, and large avenues were built on top of what once was a fertile and vibrant territory. With that, the original population was gradually displaced, their presence and memory erased from the urban fabric. Yet, beneath the avenue, the Saracura River still flows underground, a reminder that what has been buried can still resurface. And recently, during the expansion works of the city's metro line, archaeological findings brought new visibility to this past. Artifacts from the old quilombo were uncovered, triggering a movement to recognize and protect the archaeological and cultural heritage of the Saracura Valley. And still, resistance never disappeared. The neighborhood remains as a space of Afro-Brazilian cultural resilience and resistance. Groups like the Vai Vai Samba School, one of the most traditional in São Paulo, and countless local cultural collectives keep this memory alive through music, public gatherings, and street occupation. Even in the face of the systematic erasure, this practice embodies a continuous act of belonging, presence, and resistance, an everyday reaffirmation of identity and place. And the building itself now houses the 9th of July occupation, was originally a public building, so it was built in the 1940s, and it was made to host offices and social club of the National Institute of Social Security. But by the 70s, it has been abandoned, turning into a site of illegal dumping and criminal activity, avoided in the city center. In 1997, the MSTC occupied it for the first time. After a violent eviction, the movement reclaimed the building again in 2016, transforming it into what is today, a living, organized community where housing coexists with cultural, educational, and ecological initiatives. And it's very important that we talk about this female leadership here, because at the center of this transformation are women. The MSTC is led by female leaderships whose work has been crucial in building and sustaining the community's social and political fabric. Their leadership has expanded beyond the buildings itself, creating this network of alliances between different actors as residents, universities, public institutions, artists, and also the private sector. This has not only protected the occupation from eviction so far, but also shifted the public perception, turning once a stigmatized space into a recognized site of cultural, ecological, and educational renovation. So I'll just present to you like a sequence of slides illustrating the diversity of these community spaces within the occupation, starting with the vegetable garden, the community garden, which is a living laboratory for the production of healthy food, environmental education. It integrates composting systems and rainwater harvesting for reuse, combine practical sustainability with collective care. Also, we have the cultural activities, open events that foster community life, such as Sunday lunches, music festivals, film screenings, dance performances, and theater shows. These activities transform the occupation into a living cultural hub. The community kitchen, which is a pivotal space linking the garden's production to the broader community, enabling shared meals, workshops, and cultural gatherings. It operates as both a practical facility and a symbol of communal exchange. And last but not least, the parking area, that today is more like a flexible and informal space, and it functions as a kind of white card within the occupation because it's a versatile setting that can be adapted for larger scale events, gatherings, and performances. So this constellation of spaces, reveal how the 9 de Julho occupation is much more than a housing solution. It is a living experiment in collective resilience, environmental care, and cultural production. So I just leave to Julia to present to you guys our project.
Hi everyone, good evening. So, continue about the project that we are working on. Is within with this context that eco-social oasis 9 de Julho project emerged, conceived as an ecological and social oasis in the heart of São Paulo. More than a local intervention, this initiative aims to become a reference for other house occupations in Brazil. The occupation itself is already an example of regenerative architecture and landscape. The Oasis project is just another tool to strengthen this path, evoking buried rivers, bringing nature back, and cultivating the idea that urban life and forest life are not distant worlds, but part of the same living fabric. The project develops from two extremes of the site. At the top, there is already a functioning community garden. At the lowest level, there is the parking lot. Initially, this space was intended to become a sports court for children, which today takes place in a more improvised way during the community lunches. However, during the process, a spring water of Saracura's river was discovered. And the discovery transformed the project. We understood that it was necessary to bring the river back into the design to renaturalize this stream and to create what we call the Spring Square. At the Spring Square, we propose strengthening the drainage system with a capillaries well, canals, and infiltration trenches, directing the water to the infiltration garden and to so-called wet square. This area was designed as a playful space of coexistence where water reappears in a daily life. The garden school emerged from another clear demand of the community, the lack of adequate infrastructure for educational activities that already take place but without the proper conditions. There are no classrooms, no sanitary facilities, no proper areas for composting or changing rooms. The project therefore proposed a modular pavilion with translucent fabric enclosures allowing both visual and physical connection to the garden and the surrounding landscapes. The garden school is envisioned as both a pedagogical and productive space, experimental planting beds, greenhouses, area for composting, and water management workshops. Thus, part of the garden school's hydraulic system will have the Spring Square as its source of supply. The project is organized around the three main axes: ecology through water management, then renaturalization of the space and infrastructure that supports daily life; educational through the garden school and workshops on agroecology and environmental care; and autonomy by recognizing the power of self-management of the community. Thus, the project demonstrates that architecture will align with community process can strengthen ways of life. It is a practice that reveals how systemic networks can empower communities, reducing distance. The Oasis project invites us to think of architecture as an infrastructure and a tool. It is in relationships, in affections, in a collective practice that architecture finds its true meaning. So now we are going to present a video that explains the community. Actually, the leaderships will explain a little bit the project. I think we thought about it because it in a way to this distance that we have from the community to bring a little bit of them and they talk about their own community.
Eu estou no movimento vai fazer 12 anos. Nós ocupamos aqui tem 10 anos. Logo que a gente ocupou aqui, a gente começou a derrubar um pedacinho de mato ali, um pedacinho de mato aqui, sabe? Fazendo uma coisinha ali. E o pessoal foram se entrosando na horta. Mas a horta mesmo, em si, ela começou de uns 6, 7 anos pra cá. Que aí o movimento tomou conta mesmo dela estar bonita assim. Um dia a gente colhe um lado, outro dia a gente colhe outro. E essa parte vai pra cozinha. Nada é vendido, tudo é aqui dentro da ocupação. Tem os almoços todo domingo, você entendeu? E ainda tem aquelas quentinhas que saem para os moradores de fora. Um prato você almoça e o outro prato vai para o pessoal de morador de rua.
Eu sou Carmen Silva, liderança do MSTC, Movimento Sem Teto do Centro, que faz a gestão da ocupação 9 de julho. A ocupação 9 de julho me possibilitou um lar em São Paulo, me possibilitou o pertencimento ao território de São Paulo. Então, essa ocupação significa muito. Eu cresci tanto como pessoa, como também liderança. Nós estamos dando início ao projeto Oásis da ocupação 9 de julho, mas dentro de toda essa questão de processo, a gente se depara aqui com o braço do rio Saracura. É muito significativo, que é o resgate da gente poder colocar o rio para cima.
Eu estou com racionamento de água. E como a gente tem muita água aqui embaixo, nós temos um lençol freático aqui embaixo, para mim era importante vir uma água de lá para cá. Como a gente vai ter um teto solar aqui, né? É o banheiro, um vestiário, um espaço para me receber o pessoal, porque se está chovendo, eu tenho que receber aqui. Aqui no centro de São Paulo, você tem uma horta dessa, é pequena, mas você olha o que você tem aqui dentro. Você entendeu? E todo mundo chega aqui e fica bobo, porque todo mundo quer ter uma hortinha e não tem como. Chega aqui e me pergunta, como que eu faço? Eu falei, pega uma caixa, põe na janela, põe em qualquer canto, planta 2 pés de alface, que você vai ter.
Nós sempre tivemos um sonho de que as ocupações, ela não poderia ser restrita somente ao movimento. O nosso sonho e a nossa percepção sempre foi de abrir isso para a sociedade, para a cidade de São Paulo. Então, com esse projeto, isso nos dá a possibilidade de manter uma questão realmente de ser uma ocupação aberta, porque a gente sempre teve o receio de abrir os muros, de ter as portas abertas. E a ocupação 9 de julho provou e demonstrou que é possível a convivência compacta com toda a cidade. Venham conhecer de fato o que é o movimento social que luta por direito, pela garantia de direito, pelo direito à cidade.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, good evening. I'm very happy to be here. I'd like to thank the Architecture Foundation and the ReArch Institute. I'm Karina. I'm a Brazilian architect. I graduated in architecture and urban planning at the School of Architecture in the Federal University of Minas Gerais. And I'm the founder and coordinator of Arquitetura na Periferia, which means architecture in the urban periphery. I started the project because when I graduated, I had a discomfort with the profession, because in Brazil, most of the people don't have access to us. They actually don't even know what architects are for. So I decided to enter the masters to try to understand why things were like that, and also to propose another way of practicing architecture. A way that could allow me as a professional to be close to the majority of the people that are actually building the cities and their homes. So I'd like to start by telling you a story of Luciana, who said this phrase that I love so much, and I think it resumes a lot of what we do. This is the picture that she brought to me in our second meeting when she was supposed to bring a picture of the pictures of her house. And this is what represented what she least liked it about her house. Actually, she hated it. And this was Luciana's house. And you see, if I had entered her house, I imagine I would never notice that little tap water. Because of my trained architectural eyes would probably be concerned with different things. But the thing is that that was the only water source she had, and it was too close to the floor, so she couldn't fit a bucket to collect water, so she preferred to go on the back and ask for her neighbor to get her the water. And her husband always said that he would fix it, but he never did. So she entered the project, and she learned how to measure and draw her house, because we like to know the house from the woman's perspective first, because they're the ones who know what they need. So in order to do that, and so we could speak the same language, we asked them to draw their homes for us. And she learned to measure, to draw, and she also learned to read an architectural plan. And this time she loved it. And after seeing her house from a different perspective, we began to discuss what she would like to do to her place. And here you see us discussing it together, because there's another important point of our work. We're always working with small groups, so one can give her opinion to the other, and also, very important, they can support each other. And Luciana is the one with the red shirt, and Adriana is giving her some suggestions. So the drawings are, in this case, more like tools for them to plan their home improvements. It doesn't matter if it was done by hand or in the computer or even inside the construction site during the construction works. They are actually in constant change. I like to talk about Sérgio Ferro, who is an author that I admire a lot and is a reference to me. He tells a story about when the drawings were done inside the construction site in a one-to-one scale. And architects were only another construction worker. And the moment that we started to be apart from the site, and that the drawings also began to be done away from the construction sites, we also started to come from different social classes. So the workers, we got apart from the construction site and also from the workers. And also the workers were stripped out of that knowledge of the drawing. And the drawing became a repression tool, because only the privileged ones with access to university could know how to read it. And here we try to change that logic and make the drawing be a tool for emancipation. So back to Luciana's story. Now she knows how to read a plan, she has drawn the modifications she wants, and it's time to transform that into reality. So we also learned how to do the calculation of materials, and also all the budgets. And that was when we realized it was too expensive to build. So they thought, well, maybe we can learn how to build. And that was what we did. I called up a woman, a master builder, and she came to teach us. And in that moment, Luciana fixed the biggest problem in her house. We did all the plumbing, and raised her tap water. We even installed a toilet flush, and all that was done in one morning. So you can imagine what a tough job her husband had. I'm going to play a video now that will show you this experience.
O projeto Arquitetura na Periferia atua em 3 comunidades da região metropolitana da cidade de Belo Horizonte. A Eliana Silva, onde moram cerca de 300 famílias, a Dandara, onde moram mais de 2.000 famílias, e a Paulo Freire, com 150.
Então a gente tem que tirar as medidas e desenhar. E aí eu vou pedir para vocês fazerem isso.
Nossa, gente, a gente vai aprender a medir as coisas, aprender a fazer coisas diferentes que a gente nunca tinha feito, né?
A gente mede tudo. Tudo isso aqui a gente mede com cabo de vassoura.
Eu tô chique demais. Aí você vê, treina, tinha máquina fotográfica, tinha tudo, não foi chique demais.
Nunca tinha tentado desenhar um projeto.
Sabe quando você se sente assim, uma pessoa que tem valor em alguma coisa, pode fazer alguma coisa?
E a outra coisa que eu queria agora para a próxima reunião, vocês já vão desenhar o que vocês querem. Você já pode desenhar a casa com a modificação que você pensou, entendeu?
Esse negócio de desenhar mudou muito, porque eu via minha casa de outro jeito.
Eu preciso de 3 quartos, preciso de um banheiro e preciso de uma cozinha. E aí eu tenho que fazer caber tudo nesse espaço.
E com o desenho eu pude ver onde que eu podia colocar uma porta, mudar tudo, aí formei tipo a casa mesmo.
Eu fiz hoje de manhã correndo ainda, com medo de não dar tempo.
Aí depois que a gente começou a fazer o projeto, a gente começou, nossa, eu podia fazer isso. Não podia quebrar essa parede e fazer assim, que ia ficar bacana.
A porta do banheiro, que eu joguei já pro corredor.
Eu pensei em diminuir um pouco o banheiro, que o banheiro é muito exagerado, e fazer uma área de tanque.
E aí fazer a loja, né, com a saída aqui pra rua.
Tava querendo fazer coisas demais. E coisas que, quando a Karina falou o orçamento, não ia caber no orçamento. Foi aí que a gente colocou o pé no chão.
Teve algumas dúvidas. Com quem que vai ficar esse dinheiro? Como que vai pagar?
E aí a gente conseguiu chegar num acordo.
Foi bom que a gente teve confiança uma com a outra.
Abrir a conta, tipo, eu posso abrir e passar pra você o cartão.
Cartão,
entendeu? Mas quem vai ficar responsável de recolher
pelo dinheiro, você.
Porque aqui no Dandara, as mulheres do Dandara, elas são muito lutadeiras, sabe? Lutam muito pelos objetivos. Então, nós achamos que se nós mesmos conseguíssemos fazer alguma coisa, e não dependesse de pagamento, que o dinheiro ia render mais.
Aí a Karina falou, uai, eu ia até falar com vocês, tem uma moça que eu conheço, que é pedreira e tal. Falei assim, você podia falar com ela pra ela vir aqui dar uma oficina pra gente aprender também a mexer, né? Que aí ia facilitar mais ainda.
E aí a gente sabendo fazer, né, a gente ia conseguir tocar a obra.
Foi assim que surgiu a ideia da oficina de construção.
Eu pensei que eu não ia ter capacidade de dar conta de fazer.
Não, ela aguenta.
Aguenta. Pra você fazer sozinho é uma coisa, agora pra você fazer com uma professora te ensinando, aí dá medo. O dia do reboco mesmo, acho que eu tremia mais que vara verde.
Quem quer jogar?
A gente aprendeu a fazer as coisas e assim que a gente pode ser independente se a gente quiser.
A gente ficou empolgado. Sabe, nossa, nós vamos ser pedreiros e tal. Só que a gente esqueceu que ser pedreiro tem que pegar tijolo. Não. Tem que peneirar areia, tem que virar massa, tem que colocar o tijolo, tem que rebocar.
Rebocar é doloroso.
Ó, só precisa estar virado um pouquinho, vai sobrar embaixo, não em cima.
Levantar uma alvenaria também, né? Não é fácil, não.
É muito gostoso quando você vê, assim, uma coisa que você construiu e você olha assim, nossa, fui eu mesmo que construí, sabe? Aqui em casa a gente colocou a torneira toda vez que eu passo, então que vem alguém aqui, eu mostro. Olha a minha torneira que coloquei, sabe? Eu sei colocar a torneira.
And they didn't stop there, so they also participated in their other colleagues' hands-on workshops and learned other trades. And Luciana's dream was also to have a room for each of her 3 children. And in order to do that, she needed to build a 2nd floor. And that was started by multiple women's hands. We came up with this idea of gathering the women that were interested in actually working with construction. And we started to build up the walls of Luciana's room in a series of workshops there was lots of sweat, tears, and laughter. And I think it's important to mention that the joy in the building site is something that we've discovered to be truly transformative as well. Because of its pedagogical and collaborative nature, it creates a very inspiring environment, and the one that strengthens self-esteem and cooperation amongst the women. So now, when I look at Luciana's house, I see her. She is in every corner of the space, and a space that was built by the gathering of so many women. Now, I'll have to tell you that this story is already 10 years old. But the good thing is that the project has grown, and now we are an institute that gathers women and supports women to lead transformations in their homes and communities. And here are some of our pillars, which are knowledge, care, and autonomy. As Manon was saying, we are located in Belo Horizonte, which is the capital of the state of Minas Gerais, southeast Brazil, close to São Paulo and Rio, but not São Paulo and Rio. And also, we don't have all those beautiful coastlines, but we are surrounded by mountains and stunning landscapes. And the city's name is actually means beautiful horizon, Belo Horizonte. And it's home to about 2.3 million people. And like many large cities in Brazil, we face deep inequalities, like the girls were saying about São Paulo. We have more than 95,000 homes in the city that are considered inadequate. And that's why we work alongside the social movements and within these urban occupations. Here, the dots are some of the homes that we've been working with. And here are the photos of some of these territories. And I'd like to mention that one of the differences between these territories and what is called, we are known as favelas, is that they are made by organized social movements together with the residents. And in this case, they actually had urban planning before people moved onto the land. So I think in this case, also the architectural drawing was also used as a tool to defend the human rights. And so our method is, I like to see it as this cycle thing that is aligned with the philosophy of our dear Nego Bispo, who says about the beginning, the middle, and the beginning. So we don't see it as a linear work. We always start with community engagement, and then we start with the listening and learning with the community and the participants. Then we go and start sharing our knowledges and co-creating the projects. And then we start the hands-on workshops, the joint efforts, and the collective constructions. And all these participants, they become multiplier of this movement of gathering and learning. And they also help us to start new engagements, new communities, and so on. So at the moment, our work has unfolded into 4 main projects. And I like to say that this was accomplished with the support of ReArc Institute, that besides the work with technical advisory for home improvements with the small groups of women that we've been doing like for more than 10 years, we use in this work, we also use a range of tools to support the pedagogical process of collaboration and design, such as scale models, pieces of furniture, booklets, and other materials that the women can use. Here's an example of a house that was drawn by the resident, and she didn't have a bedroom, so she constructed that bedroom, and she did improvements in her living room and the kitchen using natural lighting. And here's the drawing that she did. And now the other project that we have is this project focused on training women who want to work in the construction. And this is one of our class of trainees. And these women, they are trained through hands-on experience by actually carrying out improvements in the home of other women. Here's another example. We're talking about women that had never built before anything. And here they renovated the facade and the service area of this house. And the other project that we're doing, is a project focused on improving community spaces and using environmentally responsible techniques and natural materials. And when we talk about that, we have to say about the climate emergency. It's important to point out that these communities are the most affected by its consequences, and especially women. And they are actually not the ones contributing to this problem, but yet, at the same time, they are also leading many of the community-based responses, like the girls were exposing here before, like from urban gardens to agroecology movements, and creating these local solutions for resilience. And here's the transformation of the Paulo Freire Cultural Center that we used earth and bamboo for the flooring, the walls, and the ceiling lining. And we also built a green roof after the one that existed collapsed during a heavy rain, which have been getting worse every year, the rains. And I think it's really beautiful to see this green dot in the middle of this such dense urban area. And okay, all these projects, they are connected as part of this larger constellation. Here we see the three, in the black, the three projects, and in the middle, this group of women, they circulate amongst all these actions. I'm not gonna go through all of it, but it's something that we try to keep like one thing passing through the other. And what starts to happen is that we keep receiving these photos on our phones of women sending us pictures of themselves applying what they have learned in their own homes, in their own communities, and in other places as well, using the techniques and the things that they've learned. Here are some examples of earth plaster, earth paint, and so on. And for me, this is one of the most moving aspects of our work, is seeing that these women become multipliers. Is seeing that even after they've completed a cycle with us, they keep transforming not only the spaces and not only inspiring others, but especially transforming themselves. Thank you. I invite you to follow us on the social networks.
Hello, good evening. It's a great pleasure to be here in this space of dialogue, sharing some reflections under the title Learning from Brazil. I think it's very special to choose to learn from this Brazil because we have a lot of different situations in Brazil. So I'm happy to be here, thank you. I'm going to share a video while I'm going to talk, and you will get the point of the connection. So my name is Gabriela de Matos. I'm architect, curator, researcher, and professor from Minas Gerais, but based in São Paulo. My practice has always been guided by the desire to rethink what architecture can be when it listens to other voices, when it opens itself to race, gender, ancestry knowledge, and ecology as a way of building spaces. In fact, it was with a talk by the Brazilian singer and intellectual Gilberto Gil, who spent his exile here in London during the 70s, that I began to expand my notion of architecture and how space can be interpreted in multiple ways. In this talk, he interprets some of the buildings designed by Oscar Niemeyer in Brasília through a kind of music conducting, revealing architecture as something that can also be felt, embodied, and performed. Over the past years, I've been transitioning between different territories, both geographical and conceptual, practice, creating, pedagogy, and research. I founded the Black Female Architects Project and Instituto Cambará, which is two platforms that seek to give visibility to Afro-Brazilian spatial practice and to create new modes of collective making. Both platforms aim to draw attention to the lack of Afro-Brazilian representation in the field of architecture, a critical issue in a country where 56% of the population self-identify as Black. I think you could see this in both presentations. We have most of Black people being on the pictures, on the videos and everything. And the Black Female Architects projects focus on mapping and highlighting the work of Brazilian Black women in architecture. Today it includes more than 800 professionals across all over the 26 Brazilian states. Instituto Cambará, on the other hand, was created to promote the theoretical, critical, and practical production of this group of professionals, men and women, fostering research, exhibitions, and collective experimentation. As Manon said, I also created the Brazilian Pavilion in 2023 in Venice, Architecture Biennale, a project that invites the public to look at the earth not just as a material, territory, or ground, but to think of terra, as we say in Portuguese, as land, memory, and the common life of human and more than human beings. I am now currently pursuing a PhD at TU in Eindhoven with the Curatorial Research Collective, where I'm developing a research project titled Between the Terreiro and Modernism, Curatorial Approach to Counter Narratives in Brazilian Architecture. This research examines the relationships between two key sites in Brazil architectural heritage, the Coati complex, designed by the Italian architect Lina Bobardi in Salvador, and the Terreiro da Casa Branca, a project shaped collective by Yalorixás and the Candomblé community. For me, by recentering Afro-Brazilian architectures within the history, discourse, and knowledge of Brazilian architecture, the project seeks to review the diversity of our spatial expression and to question the notion of Brazilian modernism as the unique or definitive representation of our architectural identity. So my PhD research and my curatorial practice are deeply intertwined. They both ask how curating can function as a critical methodology in architecture, one that not only displays objects or buildings, but also mediates relations, narratives, and counter-histories. In Between the Terreiro and Modernism, I investigate how architectural knowledge can be reimagined when we bring together two radically different sites, the Terreiro da Casa Branca, one of the oldest Candomblé sacred places in Brazil, and Lina Bobardi Coati complex, a modernist project built on the hillsides of Salvador. Both spaces, through emerging from different cosmologies, reveal architecture as a relational field grounded in the encounter between body, land, and community. This dialogue between the terreiro and modernism is for me not about contrast or polarity, but about learning from coexistence, from how these spaces hold time, memory, and collective making, and should be regarded, recognized, and protected with the same level of importance. Especially places such as terreiros, which are exposed to institutional racism and to religious and cultural intolerance in every part of Brazil. Instituto Cambará is where these ideas take form. It is the living extension of my PhD research. It operates as both a platform and a practice, a space where we experiment with curatorial methodologies, architectural pedagogy, and collaborative construction as interconnected modes of thinking and doing, as you can see here in the video. Through Cambará, theory becomes matter. It becomes structure, performance, and dialogue. The projects we develop are always to test how architecture can become a medium for repair, for listening, and for encounter. In that sense, Cambará is not only an institution, but also an attitude, a curatorial gesture that insists on collective authorship and situated knowledge. One of Cambara's current initiatives is Oco. It's this residence that you can see here in this video. And it was this residence in July, created in July, and we did this installation with bamboo that is now on exhibition on the 14th São Paulo Architecture Biennial. Built in bamboo and designed collectively with local artisans and architects, Oco, the name of the installation, embodies the very questions that animate my research. How can we build from the exchange of knowledge among Black women? How can we produce space as a form of learning while giving life to anti-colonial projects? The structure is both a shelter and a place for exchange, like a school, a place for conversations, gathering, and practice of repair. It stands as a breathing architecture, one that transforms as people inhabit it. Through Oco, the ideas of the terreiro, which is like this first, like quilombo, the first expression of Afro-Brazilian architecture, collectively connected to this idea of collective care and ancestry, meet the critical discourse of curating and architectural experimentation. It is where theory, practice, and critique merge, not as separate categories, but as a part of the continuous movement of thinking through making. So for me, to learn from Brazil is to recognize that architecture is not merely a discipline of design buildings, but a process of re-existence and a reconnection to the territory, to its knowledge and its needs. It means looking toward experiences that are not yet at the center of our field of knowledge, but are deeply rooted in the diversity of our culture. Experiences that refuse to treat concrete as a neutral material, apolitical, and universal material capable of solving all architectural problems, as we use in Brazil. It's about how we keep building after devastation, how we remember through space, and how we imagine other ways of making. Through Cambará and through my research, I try to hold these gestures together to make it visible that which has been historical silence and to create conditions for new forms of dialogue to emerge. So learning from Brazil means learning from its pluralities, from its contradictions, its ancestral knowledges, and its collective resilience. And that, I believe, is the task of architecture today, to create spaces that not only represent the world, but also experiment with other ways of inhabit it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for these presentations. It's a great idea actually to bring videos. I feel like it helps bring a little bit of Brazil to the Barbican and give us a real sense of who and where you're working with. As you were saying, reminding us, Gabriela, this talk is called Learning from Brazil, and I'm curious to start this conversation by asking you who and where you all have been and are continuing to learn from. Perhaps this is because my feeling is that what you're practicing is quite different from what you have been taught, and the ways in which you have been taught architecture. So could each of you start by sharing with us one thing that you have learned either recently or something that you learned a while ago but that is still actively kind of shaping your practice and still accompanying you today? Julia, would you like to start?
Yeah, I can start.
I feel like you were about to.
So I think something about like this whole process about the project that we presented, I think about a word that is adapt. Like adapt our architecture, adapt about the context and the territory, and with the community, because they are people, they are very different people, there are a lot of profiles, and I think when we start like thinking about some program or some demand, that at the beginning with this project we started like with this courtyard, yes, for the child and the children's. And we discovered like the spring water. So what we can do? Oh, we have time to change the product? No, we don't have time to change the product, but we have to change the product. So I think in this process, with this project, think about this flexibility of us as an architect, but with the community too, to understand some things that we discovered and to discuss together. Mm-hmm. So always adapting this whole process.
Victoria, would you like to add?
Sure. I would say from like being a student, my last years, I got in touch with Sérgio Ferro, the author that Karina brought here, and it actually changed a lot the way I perceived architecture, mainly understanding how nonsense the social division of work is absolutely nonsense for these days. I mean, so since the beginning of my practice, I wanted to put in practice the idea of not having this the kind of idea of the architect as someone who is occupying this place of the intellectual work, and there is the people who are actually like doing the manual work. And I think this is something that actually, I mean, reflected a lot through our works, and also I would say from this process in particular inside the occupation. For sure, understanding the concept of flexibility, because I mean, not so much as design for sure, but I mean flexibility with people, because I mean Carmen is this leader and she deals with a lot of different agents and people that occupy different spots in society and different interests, and she has this ability. Super smart ability to deal with these different actors and not close to dialogue. She's always open to dialogue, whatever the person is, even if it's like the bad guys. She will be talking to them because she knows how to actually extract, like hack, you know, like how these people could be actually useful to the movement, to the purpose of the movement. So yeah, I've been actually learning a lot. Of course, this has reflections in my work, but I would say even as a person, this idea of being open to reality as it is. Otherwise, I won't be able to transform it at all. So, yeah.
Yeah, to me, I always think that one thing that has changed a lot is that architecture is more about listening to people than to convincing. Because when I was studying, I always had to convince my teacher that my project was a good project. So that was one thing I learned to listen. And also I think it's a lot about relations, and not only human relations, but all the relations that we have with the other living beings and with space and nature. And also it's a lot about the process. I like to think of the process as the main thing, especially when we're learning and sharing, and not only about the final product or project or drawing.
Well, I think in the beginning of my work, both with Cambará and Black Female projects, I learned with people outside the field of architecture first, to look through an intersectional lens through the architecture. And then when I realized that I have to have this pretty complex perspective of understanding our social condition in Brazil, my idea of architecture collapsed. So I started to unlearn everything. So I'm always unlearning how to do projects, unlearning how to choose material, unlearning how to think in spaces. So I've been unlearning a lot, and I'm very happy to do it. So I'm always choosing to what I can unlearn now, so I can look to other ways, Yeah.
It makes me think of the work of Comunal in Mexico, which I was thinking about a lot when kind of preparing this talk and learning about your work, who talk about the deformación profesional. So instead of kind of like professional training, like professional shaping, it's like the de-shaping, the unlearning, I guess, is how it translates. And it's a kind of constant kind of effort at unlearning and undoing, I guess. It's not just what has been taught, but also what surrounds you, and what other people might be doing around you.
And I think this connects everything that we are doing. I create a concept called disobedient architecture, which is like everybody that is in some ways disobedient this idea of what it is architecture, for whom, and what shapes or forms has to be. And it's funny that I invited they to talk about the experience 2 years ago, because I feel that we are all here disobedient in this field. Yes.
I guess another commonality, which is kind of arguably very obvious now that we all see on stage, but is also what you were saying, Gabriela. This is, this Brazil as opposed to the many other Brazils, and is the question of gender in architecture, and who gets to build, but also who you build with. And I'm curious to kind of understand for you what it means, whether you see your practices as kind of feminist and whether that's important. For example, Karina, I was curious when watching the video about how do the men who live in these neighborhoods kind of respond to the work that you are doing with the women.
Yeah, when I began doing this I think on the second cycle that we started, yes, we're feminists, and I knew that, but then there was this woman that she left the project, and of course she didn't tell me exactly why, but then the other girls, they came and told me that her husband wasn't uncomfortable with her participation, and that shocked me
because it's strange, because even though we know the thing is there, structurally there, when it comes in this like so raw, you know, it's something for the house, for everyone. It will be a good thing, a good impact for everyone living there. And then no, I don't like the idea of you learning something or of you being independent. But at first I was shocked, and I was like, I'm very also uncomfortable. But then next I was like, okay, I think we're going on the right way. I think we're doing good. That's what we need to, you know, to shake. So we can not only know that problem exists, but we can see it and we can tackle it, you know, we can and things obviously have been changing for good sometimes. We see lots of other relations with the men from the community, and actually it was so interesting and so joyful for us that like some of our joint efforts, like when we get together to work, all the women were in the construction site building and the men were in the kitchen doing doing lunch. So when I saw that again, I was like, yes, I think we're shaking something.
Maybe it was in your presentation, Julia and Victoria, that it was like less obvious initially until you kind of like revealed the fact that the leadership, the people who are kind of like driving the Movimento Sem Teto do Centro, are actually all women. And I'm curious to understand how you kind of, what that means inside the occupation, and if you can tell us a little bit more about how this group of women leaders of the occupation is kind of influencing your own roles and your own practice.
Sure. I would say, in a sense, that 9 de Julho occupation can be read as a kind of a matriarchy structure, even. Because, I mean, all the leaderships are female, starting with Carmen. And I believe that's why they managed to build this really strong network of connections that work as a protection to them, but also I believe that's why they are so organized inside, with, I mean, very clear, you know, responsibilities. And I mean, it's kind of funny because I see men inside the occupation. They have a lot of. It is kind of. I don't know. Someone had to really study, like someone from anthropology or sociology, because they are very respectful to the leadership, the female leaderships, and then not only to the female leaderships, because once they have this spot, they of course they are more respectful to the other women in general, and they kind of have this role inside the occupation that is, I mean, it is kind of a matriarchy, really, you know, so they kind of put themselves sometimes almost as they were like under the, you know, the female figures. So it's funny because it's a total inversion of reality going on there. And also, I don't know, it makes me think a lot, you know, because we are working inside the occupation, so we are every day in the occupation, talking to people, and I mean interacting to people and living with them, and it's kind of it feels like I'm entering this bubble. When I go to the occupation, it feels like I'm entering this bubble that is really aside from reality outside the walls. And of course, I think we have a lot to learn. I mean, society and men have a lot to learn about this experience. But I would say more than anything that what I think it's most important is that it really shows how things are much more organized and how this community is so much more open to society than other examples we have with, for example, male leaderships. So, yeah.
I think just to add something, surprisingly, the leaderships are female. It's just not in this movement, the 9 de Julho occupation, but in most of the communities. And something like personally that I thought about it is because like we always do this kind of relation that women care, nurture. Of course, the leaderships are doing this with this community, but they are fighters. There's some angry there because of the historical thing, because the whole process, the whole life that they passed through about where they came from, and there's something that there's angry there. But this angry they transform, and they are doing a lot of things from this community. So. That's something that I always think, because men, when they see like this kind of leadership that are not inside of the community but outside, I don't know if they think why they're always women's leader in these kind of communities.
Gabriela, with you, I guess it's more in the question of research and the importance of kind of researching, mapping the work of kind of Black female architects in Brazil. I think part of my question there is also, to what extent is this research trying to kind of like redress an imbalance because of the lack of recognition of Black female architects in Brazil historically and up to the present day? Is there a moment that you will feel like you will have kind of managed to redress the balance? Like, is it like a project with kind of a limited duration in a way?
I think in certain ways we are talking about different steps of the life of a Black woman in Brazil here through our projects. Because just for people to understand, in Brazil we have this complex social pyramid, and in the basis is the Black women. So that's not like a magical thing that they build this technology so they could live in their families, in their communities, like in the Ocupação 9 de Julho, in the terreiros, in the quilombos. So they are the basis of the thing. So, but it's very natural in Brazil when you see a Black woman in a position of, in a vulnerable position, poverty or things like this. It's very common. Brazil doesn't question this. But why we don't have architects? Why we don't have like professors? Why we don't have, so people, why are you looking for Black women in architecture? We see Black women all over the places.
Wow.
So I started to, because it's another step of the thing. So, and we are still, okay, now we are like the result of the movement of Black communities that they did in Brazil, like in the 60s, 70s, 80s. So we could study, we could learn a profession, but still, when we are like, okay, now I want to work, people are not working, they receive the lowest salary and everything. So for me, it's like the other position on this struggle, it's like understand how now we can connect with these ancestral technologies of like community gathering and how we can create forms of living, looking for the past, no? So I feel we are in different positions of the same history here.
I guess what's interesting as well is that you, in different ways in your practices, you also connect the kind of the challenges faced by women, like you say, like different, even of different types, I guess, with the kind of broader questions of climate. As you were saying, women are disproportionately affected by the climate catastrophe. We know that these kind of inequalities are intersectional, and I'm curious to kind of understand how acknowledging the kind of like connection that there is between the domination of women or minority groups generally and the domination on nature, on the environment, how that then affects like quite pragmatically the materials you work with. You're all kind of, for example, Gabriela, we were kind of seeing a lot of bamboo on the screen as you were presenting. In the Occupation 9 de Julho, you were talking about the kind of like the idea of waste and of recycling as well. Yours trying to investigate or look into how kind of natural materials can be used. I'm interested to like better understand how you do that and how much you can push it. For example, in the Occupation 9 de Julho, like I think the project is about to start on site. And so how did you make decisions about what materials to work with? What was possible? What was more difficult?
Okay, difficult, this one. Because I think, in general, the thing about the material, it depends of the context, depends of the territory, depends of the resource. So in this case, we have a resource, limited resource. So we have to think about the materials as the resource, but also as the territory provides. I think in the case of Gabriela, you were in the territory, there's a lot of bamboo, so that's a thing about intention and resource and the territory. So in the occupation, I think the decisions about the project, first, because of the spring water, I think the idea of the reuse materials is not that because we had a work that we research in an experimental way the reuse of materials, but in this case, I think the whole thing of the water is to evoke this water and to use this water as a resource to make some kind of really a cycle in both parts of the project. So not always it would be like answer that it's directly, but in this case we were like in the whole process identifying some points. So one point is the water, so we are going to reuse and use this water as a resource of the whole hydrical system of the garden community. And we have other thing that is time. So we have a time to construct, and of course there's a land, there's a territory that is in use. So the garden community is not a thing that, oh, it's not built. No, there's something, there's people there working, it's part of the community, so we have to think about it and think about in this case, the material that we are going to construct in a quick way. So we are using the, how can I say it? MLC, timber, the wood. CLT, yes, thank you. Yeah, because of the time. Because, of course, about thinking about the sustainability of the material too, but about the time.
No, just to add something, I think, I mean, we're not, what we are proposing is no different from what the occupation has been doing for many years. So it's more like understanding architecture as an infrastructure to enhance these spaces and these activities that already happens there. So they already have the composters, they already have the reuse system, the water use system. We're just trying to bring more infrastructure to really get the potential of these spaces, and I mean enhance what these spaces can be. But I mean, the reuse of materials is something that we have much more to learn with them than they have to learn with us. I mean, they are the people that are actually working with the use of materials since ever. So this is something that we actually, I mean, we've been in touch with Ocupação 9 de Julho at least since 2016, so almost 10 years now, and still as students in that time. But after that, we as practice were very much attracted to the reuse of materials concept and how to put it in practice, and we actually search for the occupation to do things together, understanding also how we could learn from their practice on reuse of materials. So it's something that came much more from them than from us to them, you see. Yeah.
Is that different or similar with you, Karina, like when you were introducing kind of natural materials in the construction and renovation of the homes?
Yeah, for us it's interesting because when I started to talk about the project, people would always ask, oh, but I see lots of cement in your photos and your videos, what about natural materials? And I was like, okay, you don't just go to a place, a community or whatever and say, oh, built with this, built with earth. Nothing around that person is built with earth. So it's not how it works, not even my home. And so what we did, but at the same time, as you saw in the video, the techniques using the industrial materials, they're too heavy for the bodies. And there are so much waste, and that really bothers us. So what we thought was, why don't we bring this in a pedagogical way, like everything we do? So let's invite them to learn and to research before we propose anything, any project. And that was really amazing, because once we started to have other references, Gabriela actually was one of the people invited to talk to the girls. She brought the Tejeros references, African references, and they started to remember like how their grandmothers used to build with earth, and there's like this emotion, a good emotion that comes from it, and it's actually it is. Women, they were very much involved in the constructions of their homes once it was done with earth. They were the main responsibles for that. And when construction became a job, something that had to do with capitalism, they were like pushed away. So it's really nice we feel that it's like returning to us the power to build with our environment. Mm-hmm. And it's been a very beautiful construction that we've been managing to reconnect things, and also with the ancient knowledge. People always knew how to do that, so it's like giving back this power.
Is there these connections between the materials and I guess who is building, like the fact that these women are kind of in a well reacting very easily, like you're saying, it's I guess you needed to convince your teachers of what you were doing, but maybe with them it's a little bit of an easier task. But I'm curious, when Gabriela, you were talking about like this Brazil, and is the research into like construction with natural materials part of what you're investigating through the work of the Black female architects? Like, is this something that's important to bring to the fore, to have a kind of alternative, I guess, history to, I mean, as, Brazil is known for concrete. It's like the kind of Paulista school. It's the kind of modernism. It's so is it important to kind of build an alternative narrative?
Yes, because I feel we are in this moment now in Brazil where rich people want to build with remnant earth, bamboo and everything. So you have these huge houses in Bahia, and they are very expensive. So this cultural understanding of what it is architecture, what is this status of architecture that Karina was saying, that the women from the occupation doesn't want to build with earth because they connect earth with poverty. this was built like this. So these quilombos, terreiros, all these traditional communities, they erased this knowledge. They forgot how to do. And now we see these huge companies doing remnant earth in a way that, okay, we just us know how to do this. So my point now is we have, as architects, reconnect to these other ways of building again, so we can offer this kind of material, this kind of service that is more connected to our culture. It's not something that we are bringing from nowhere. It is already on our history. So we are in this moment creating a space for experimentation, because when you this is something to unlearn from Brazil, guys. Notice we are stuck in modernism until today. This is very sad, but it's true. We know it's true. And so we just know how to build with concrete. Concrete is the only material that we use to do anything like a bench. We're going to do in concrete. So if you say this as a professor, when I say in the Faculty of Architecture, so we are here in this space to experiment with all the materials. You have to do this here, because it's going to be difficult if you're not doing this now. And it's like broke people's head to put this inside, because all they see is concrete in the cities.
Dude, I remember the story that I think it's Sérgio Ferro that tells that story of the concrete when it came to Europe, to France, because it was mostly it's like a way to stop the strikes from the workers, the master builders that build it with stone, with wood. They were doing lots of strikes. So the concrete came, and okay, we don't need you and your knowledge anymore. We just need an engineer that can calculate, and anyone can mix. So everything is political.
Yes, everything is
at
political.
the end.
Yes, yes.
So I think it's very important to be doing these connections. Not because it's pretty. I think it's wonderful, the earth, but it's not only that.
Yes, and this residence, we were there, 10 architects. Just me has this first experience already with bamboo, but the other 9 doesn't. And we learn how to plant, how to build, how to plan with bamboo, because it's not something, okay, I know how to do architecture with concrete. Now I know how to do with bamboo. No, you don't know how to do with bamboo. But it's possible to learn, and it's easy to do when you are also a woman. We built that structure with 6 meters in 4 days, and we were supposed to do in 7 days. So we finish in 4, and then we start to make parties inside and bring people to talk inside. So it was amazing. And people, I can build something, because when you are an architect, you can't build alone nothing with concrete. Maybe a bench.
Before I open to the audience, I'm keeping an eye on time, but there's one more question I wanted to ask you before I turn to you. It's a very pragmatic question, but I think many people in the room might be wondering how you actually sustain your practices, like how you're able to kind of fund the work that you do. Are there things you're working on that you're not talking to us about that enable you to kind of make a living and organize? I think it's a real kind of important question, I also think, because I think some people might be, thinking, this is possible in Brazil, it's not possible here. We're here to, as we say, learn from Brazil. So I'm curious for you to kind of tell us a little bit more about the kind of financial structures of your practices. That's not indiscreet.
Okay. In my case, that was always a goal for me. Once I was in doing my master's, I wanted it to be my profession. So since the beginning, I was chasing this path. How could I make of this my living? And I decided in Brazil, we have like 3 options. We can open company like with profit, a non-profit,
or a cooperative. And in my case, I decided it would be non-profit organization, exactly because we wanted to keep working with these women that are, as Gabriela said, on the basis of the pyramid. So the money would have to come elsewhere, not from them. And then since then, we've been doing lots of things to sustain our work, but that's a premise to us that we are like professionals that are being paid and everyone has a good job. But we start writing projects for the calls that comes. We do events, we do workshops for people who want to learn the method, for people who want to put their hands on the constructions. We did products for sale, partnerships, and actually since last year we've been doing a partnership with the municipality, because what we do is actually also a public policy. We've been also collaborating in actually building this public housing policy. But the thing is, we have to have lots of branches of like funding. We don't go just for one. And also the international fundings that have been arriving to Brazil, and they're very, very good also for us.
Yeah, you can go first. Okay. Okay, so first, in our trajectory as a studio, Ruina, of course, we did a lot, like not just with occupations. We've been working with them like since we were students. We start as a volunteer, as a student. So okay, I really want to know this community. I really want to understand. I really want to be part as I can, what I can offer to them, what I can learn from them. So the occupation started like this, and when we started our Ruina's office, of course, like we started doing apartment. There's nothing to do with community, nothing to do with social impact, but it's a work. As every work we have to do, we have to pay bills. So in not to think about this romantic way, because it is a beautiful, of course, I really want to do just this for my whole life, but I can't. It's our reality. So I think it's important to say this. So it's kind of a balance of this. Of course, like in this project, REARC is like investing in this whole project. So that's why we are doing this. But of course, as the community already has, Carmen, the leadership, a lot of connections, so a lot of partnerships, an octopus of partnerships, because there's a lack of possibilities. So I think if you have like a project, you think about the activities, it's architecture, it's workshops, it's cultural, it's art, it's everything a little bit together. So I think it's a little bit of a strategy to think about when you can get these investments. Sometimes you can't. It's a reality. Sometimes you can't, and sometimes you have to think about, I can't do this pro bono, I can't do this without receiving something. Yes, I can, yes, I can't. It's something that is a reality.
Yeah, just to add, I mean, in Brazil, we don't have institutions funding projects like this. So I think it's no mystery that Europe is in advance in that matter. But that's it. We've been working with architecture always, even in like most kind of in terms of program, like super conventional projects. I don't know, like residential projects. Of course, we always try to build since the beginning the kind of methodology that brought us to what we are doing today, including with the work with the occupation. So we kind of always took the opportunities that were there and tried to do the best that we could, and always trying to extract researchers and things that we thought that were interesting to, and they were questioning the field all the time. Even like we did a lot of benches.
Yes, yes, a lot of wood benches, concrete benches.
Yeah. So. Yeah, and that's it. With the occupation specifically, a lot of volunteer work there. As I said, since we were students, we've been in the occupation. And then as Ruina, a lot of activities and participating in competitions, trying to put, the occupation inside the radar. And eventually we got very fortunate to have REARC supporting us, but just to leave a message for the I don't know, maybe young architects here or even students, to really pursue these things that you actually think that are interesting about the field, and trying to put this effort of sometimes working with things that don't, program-wise, are not what you imagine you will be doing, but trying to, this is very important, trying to extract from every kind of project what you think could be actually improving something in the field, in society. So, yeah.
Yeah. I'm thinking here, how can I answer this? I have an office of architecture. It has 11 years. And of course, I began as a student in Victoria doing apartments, a lot of kitchens, bathrooms and everything. But I couldn't be critical as I wanted to be doing kitchens. I love kitchens and benches. It's not this point. But so I started to understand that I should put some money from my office to research. And I started to organize this in the way that I could do research, being and doesn't depend of the government or anything else. As Victoria said, in Brazil we have a lot of, not now because Bolsonaro has changed a little bit our cultural situation and others, but we have other opportunities when you are speaking or working with culture. So you can have money if you are doing film or a play or something like this, but architecture is not recognized as culture. So we don't get this money and any other money. So for a Black Female Architect project, I begin alone without money, like a volunteer. And so I did a crowdfunding, yes. And this was to launch a book, because in that beginning of the idea, because of this lack of representation and also this not recognition of Black community knowledge connect to architecture, I decided that, okay, we have to launch this book and prove the point, prove that we are creating practice, theory, and etc. So this book happened, and then I started to talk about this book, doing lectures and everything. Then I invite 4 other architects for 4 years since the beginning, because now Black Female Architect has almost 8 years. And this year, we get a grant from REARC. So it was 7 years with volunteer work. Like in other ways, my office paid for the research. So it's not easy, it's not like a magical thing. And as Karina was saying, it's not like a unique solution for this. We are always thinking in the next year, and the next year, and the next year, how we're going to do these kind of things. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was just like to mention that I think it's important also for us to to take these discussions to the universities, you know, because they also have changed a lot, and I'm thankful for that, but also because of us outside pushing the discussion. And my work started inside the university, and I think that was very important to have this critical view of the work. So we are all also always trying to do this relation with universities and the public, like the government. I was afraid of relating to that, to have public resources involved, but then I have now another architect, Mariana, who has done her master's in public politics, and now I understand also the importance of us pushing for them to elaborate the public policies that actually go for the demands of the territories, because otherwise they'll just keep deciding up there, not knowing what people really need down here. So I think we are also trying to do this connection.
Policy work, yeah.
Yeah, not very easy also.